Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Online Warriors podcast. Before we get into the news today, we have a very special guest with us, Joseph Balderrama, one of the lead voice actors in critically acclaimed It Takes Two, is here with us today to talk a little bit about the industry and the game that just came out. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Very well. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
So, for the first question, I wanted to know if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you know you wanted to get into screen and voice acting, and how did you get your start?
Well, that's unfortunately a long time ago now, sadly, because I'm old, awful. But so basically, I'm from Mexico. I was born in Mexico, and I lived there until I was 10 years old, and I moved to England. Yeah, back in 1986, and then lived here since then, and went to drama school here. And when I left, when I was in the last, so my first professional job at drama school was a tour of Romeo and Juliet, and in that cast there was this guy who played Capulet. Neil, his name was, and he did a lot of voiceover work. And at that point in time, when you went to drama school, you kind of basically just thought about doing theatre and, film and TV and stuff. And voice acting was like this sort of holy grail area that only the very anointed got to be involved with. And it was sort of a very mysterious clique of wizards, really. Basically, who no one knew how you got in. Basically, it seemed impenetrable. It potentially still seems that way to some people. I don't know, but certainly that's how it was. And randomly, so like I said, he did a lot of voiceover work, and he was doing some looping on a film. He did a lot of looping, and he happened to be. This was after the tour was finished. He happened to be in a room where this frantic sort of. I don't know whether he was casting. I think he was an engineer on this. They were doing Alien versus Predator, I believe, and they were like, "We need someone to be an Aztec god." And Neil, very sort of tongue in cheek, said, "Well, I know a Mexican," and they were like, "That'll do." And so I then fast forward a week or so after that point, and I find myself at Pinewood in a booth with this guy on the other side of the booth. It was kind of very surreal, going, "Right, so basically we've got this Aztec god and you've just got to chant some stuff." And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I speak Spanish, but you mean you want me to improvise in Nahuatl? And they were like, yeah, that'll do. And I was like, okay, shit. So there I was, my first sort of professional voiceover job, essentially improvising a language I did not speak. So, quite frankly, not many people do speak Nahuatl anymore because it's what the Aztecs spoke. So there I was, basically. What I ended up doing was sort of inventing this Gregorian-like chant and listing all of the pyramid sites I remember. So if you go and rewatch Alien versus Predator, somewhere in the midst of the movie, there's this sacrifice scene, and there'll be a very distant chanting sound of me going Chichen Itza, la 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 la, or I can't even fucking remember now, but it was pretty awful. And then suddenly I just ended up doing random pieces of voiceover from there that initially it was sort of very niche stuff that they needed a Hispanic voice, and at that time there was not an abundance of Hispanic people working in the UK. And I ended up really initially doing a lot of games. I did, my first one was a game, oh God, it was The Wheelman was one of my first games. I remember having a sort of featured role in a long time ago with that. This was a Vin Diesel franchise game. And then it sort of just went from there. And Side UK, who does a lot, was one of the big sort of post-production casting and post-sound houses here in London, just ended up getting a hold of my name and have been very generous and used me a lot since then. And then I ended up getting a voiceover agent properly in and around 2008. And then things got a little bit more formal. And I ended up just sort of doing more stuff. I did a lot of radio drama. And that was another thing I did at drama school. They did this amazing thing. They had a competition, like a radio competition, basically, that was sort of sponsored by the BBC. And they would select 3 students from each year, all the sort of accredited drama schools, and they would have this sort of radio drama off. And I was on the Lambda team. So I got sort of early exposure to sort of how to be in front of a microphone and stuff that was really invaluable and in later life. So
you got a heck of improvisation skills too along the way. Holy cow.
Yeah, well, definitely the Aztec thing. That's one of the stories that I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. That was quite I don't know if you guys are familiar with it's a show called The Toast of London.
No, unfortunately not.
It's on Netflix. I suggest you check it out. It's by this very funny English actor / comedian called Matt Berry. And it's about a voiceover artist who's an actor. And there's this character called Clem Fandango in it, who basically is this sort of very young ad exec on the other side of the glass who always asks asinine questions and irritates the... and so, yeah, that was my Clem Fandango moment where the guy was like, just whatever you like, something in Aztec, that'll do. I was like, oh my God. Anyway. Yeah, so that was a long answer to your very simple question, but that's how it started.
I mean, hey, that sounds like a really interesting start, and it seems like you've gotten to dabble in a lot of different media. What would you say has been your favorite? Like, obviously, you've done games. You said you did movies and TV show voiceover and even radio shows. If you could only do like one, which one would you prefer to do?
Honestly, if you'd asked me this question before I started working, and I'm not saying this just because this is the most recent thing that's out, but if you'd asked me this before I started working on It Takes Two, I might have said theatre, because I think that as an actor, you've got most control over your work in theatre, because no one can change it once you do it.
Right.
And it changes in and of itself, every night in theory. But since having done It Takes Two, it blew my mind, I have to say. It was the first time that I'd ever worked on a game from like basically grassroots, essentially like the full mocap experience from beginning to end. And I was on the project for 2 years, myself and Annabelle, along with other actors as well. But we were obviously the main two doing the mocap along with Joseph. And it was just the most freeing, the most liberating, and the most exhilarating form of acting I think I've ever had in my career, really. It was so spontaneous. It was so sort of alive in a weird way, because, there we were in this very heavily carpeted room in Stockholm with 360 cameras pointing at us in a room that had no windows. So essentially there's no atmosphere there. And there's no set and there's no anything apart from us looking... Well, Annabelle looked fabulous, but I looked ridiculous in that suit. And you would think it would be really hard, kind of. You would think it would be a much harder way to sort of get into a world. But I just found it the most liberating thing ever, because it was so efficient as well. Like just being able to, we would do 3 days normally in Stockholm, sort of once or so a month, or sort of 3-4 month batches. And then they'd go away and, integrate all of that into the game, and then we'd come back again, and we'd get through like 30 pages of dialogue in that time. And if you were to compare that to a film or TV, 30 pages of dialogue takes like 3 months, or it's longer anyway. But it was just amazing, really. And the only odd thing was that for the cutscenes anyway, we could only they had to have a full take of any one scene. So if you forgot a line or you fucked up, that was it. The take was dead. So every take, that's the whole take, which kind of also was amazing. The cool thing about it was almost like theatre, is that whatever take you see in the game was a full take. Like that's what happened. Whole take. So it was kind of like, I don't know, like a one-shot movie, but into short tranches, And I think in the end, like the cutscenes alone in that game are easily as long as a feature film. I think I think there's something in the order of, well over an hour and a half of just cutscenes.
And I mean, I think the way that you said you guys did it all in kind of like one-shot chunks too, like it makes all of those cutscenes, because we played the game and we loved it, and it just felt super organic too. Like it didn't feel choppy like you sometimes see in other games. It just felt like it flowed really well and was really organic, and now we know why.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, I'm sure that's one of the reasons why, for sure, because and we kept going until Joseph was happy with that particular run-through take or whatever. And you could see, like, we had screens around up in the room as well, so you could see what our doll-like versions of ourselves looked like within the space that we were in. So they would digitize in a very basic form anyway, like, where we would be like on Beatles or whatever random crazy stuff we happen to be doing. We could sort of see it in the corner of our eye on the wall on a massive TV screen. And then we would just sort of play the scene with that as a sort of reference outside kind of thing, out of the corner of our eyes. So it was, technically it was certainly a huge, steep learning curve because I'd never done that before. And, I hope I get an opportunity to do that again. But, the game itself, I think, was such a special, unique thing. My relationship with Annabelle was, we did chemistry reads, almost like a film for when they were casting it. And me and Annabelle and it was all improvising. A lot of the game, obviously it was scripted, but there's a lot of improvisation that they let us, run with. Yeah. And I think that was another reason potentially why it also felt organic, was because, our relationship grew literally through the game, and we shot it in chronological order.
Yeah, I mean, it really, it felt so authentic.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. That's gratifying to know.
So you were in a starring role in It Takes Two, but you also had some involvement with Hazelight Studios in A Way Out. How did you come to get involved with them specifically?
Again, that was through Side in the UK. They just cast me. They listened to an audition I did, and Joseph, I guess, liked my voice. And in A Way Out, I played like a number of Hispanic and American prison guys, obviously. And but that was fun because I did meet Joseph. He directed all of the voice sessions in person in London. And so I had actually met him before when we came to do the auditions. And I don't know whether he remembered me or not, but maybe he did. I don't know. But yes, I auditioned for it, and that was how it happened. It wasn't any more complicated than that, really.
So you obviously mentioned that you met Josef Fares. So as the fan base, we see videos and interviews where he's this super high energy creative guy. What is it like working with him? And what is it like behind the scenes with him? Does he bring that same type of energy? And how does that kind of influence the way you do your job?
I'm not entirely sure he ever sleeps. Yeah, I mean, what you see is what you get. He is off the scale of anyone I've ever met in terms of energy. That guy is wired differently, I think, than most human beings. He's just he is nuts. And, when we first met him, me and Annabelle both afterwards, and he won't be offended by me saying this, but we were both like, he's not going to be like that the whole way through, is he? That's not possible to be quite so I've never met with anyone with such confidence, but also just energy and assurance, and just a sort of laser sort of certitude that his way was right, and he never wavers ever. I never saw him go, I don't know. He just knew one way or another, whatever decision needed to be made, it was yeah, it's that one. And that's kind of it's sort of staggering, really. And and the whole way through, he was this is going to be, he kept saying, this is going to be amazing. No one's ever seen or done anything like this before. And me and Annabelle were to be honest, we got the size and the story as it was written. So we didn't know where it was going ever.
Oh, really?
And we would get our scenes normally when we were on the flight over to Stockholm. So we'd have a night to learn it.
Wow.
And that's another reason why there's a lot of improvisation, I think, as well, because we hadn't actually had the material for very long. But as we were progressing through it, we knew our characters so well that they kind of were writing for us by the end of it as well. So it was very sort of simpatico and symbiotic by then. But it did just, we didn't know what was going on. And to be honest, when we were making it, it was very hard to understand what the hell was going on as well, because we couldn't see at that point all of the amazing game mechanics.
Right.
That, all of that stuff wasn't available to us. All we had was the story as we knew it. And we knew where it was going, roughly speaking. But, there we were 1 minute with talking frogs, and then we'd be with, Annabelle would be trying to grapple with an enormous hammer or whatever.
Yeah, and you actually not only had to deal with that, but two major characters in the game, both Cody, the male lead, and the Book of Love, Dr. Hakim. So,
lest we forget, yes.
Yeah. So with that experience, how did you have to prepare differently for each role? Because they had very, very different personalities.
They are, but I fortunately didn't have to approach them simultaneously. So Joseph did the mocap for the book.
Mhm.
So when we played those scenes with the book, Joseph would be speaking those lines and playing the part. And I would be Cody, obviously, and Annabelle would be May. And we just play the scenes and he would do these crazy hip shaking gyrations. Like, oh my God, what are you doing, you nutbag? And then obviously it was all fabulous in the end. But at the time it was like, what are you doing? No, this is so off. You're insane. And then the first time I did it, essentially it worked a little bit like ADR. So we would watch, they would sort of do their magical thing that they do and make it look amazing. And then I would get the scene and Cody and May and everything would look sort of like roughly as it did in the game. And I would ADR to what was already animated based on the mocap it had captured the previous strip.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be trying to basically fit to whatever Joseph had done. And quite frequently, Joseph's version of the lines bore no relevance to the actual lines that were written. And so there was always a little bit of jiggery pokery in terms of trying to get. But also he had this very, very unique cadence when he played the role, when he spoke it, which I always struggled to get away from because I didn't want it to sort of inform how I was vocally performing that part, which was really hard because I'd been in the room with him when he was doing it. So I always kind of had Joseph. It was a constant sort of arm wrestle in my head to get Joseph out of it and inject my own version of Hakim on top of Joseph. But in the end, I think it just worked out that the Book of Love is us both somehow.
Yeah, I can sort of see the bias as you explained it, where you want to just recreate what you had just lived. But that kind of segues into my next question about sort of these sounds and things that happen. One of the things that I've always been curious about are these kind of in-game tertiary sounds that characters make while they're playing. So like grunts, climbing, fighting, etc. What's the process for recording those, and what's your personal method to make sure that they sound lifelike?
Well, normally they just get recorded very anonymously and very separately, from the game. Like in other games, whenever you have that section of your recording session, it's normally like, oh, here we go. Okay, so now jump. Normally it's combat based. Mm-hmm. So there'll be lots of sort of, okay, this is low level impact. This is medium level stabbing. This is you're dead. And I guess because I've worked on a lot of games, I have a shorthand for how I might go through a sort of run of what they call them grunts. And you kind of, I always, the only way I can ever do them really is to actually do them. So I physically try and recreate whatever it's supposed to be that I'm supposed to be doing as much. But normally it's only ever explained to you. So normally in a game, you'll be like, okay, so here you're jumping from one building to the other or whatever. But with It Takes Two, because it was different. So we were doing a lot of the grunts and a lot of that stuff to picture, which was amazing. And it very rarely, in fact, I don't think I've ever worked on a game that it's happened on. So, when you're tobogganing through the tobogganing one, when we're in the snow globe scene.
Sure, toboggan world, we'll call it.
Right. Toboggan world, indeed. I did that to picture. And it was amazing because it makes it so much better, I think, and so much more real in a way. A lot of the movement-based noises were done like that. So they had basically done a little avatar of Cody and got him to do all the game mechanic moves that he does in the game without having the game. So they would just be playing me doing stuff. And then I would voice those movements by watching it. And in all honesty, I've never worked on a game where that's been done like that.
Oh.
That is really interesting.
It's normally always without picture and just a spreadsheet of lines, and they are grunts and they're descriptions of what those grunts are supposed to be. Like I said, heavy damage to the head or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely feel like having those pictures and videos in front of you will help you evoke the emotion and tone for all of those noises. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was definitely invaluable, really.
Mm-hmm. So Basically talking about the game in a broader scope, when It Takes Two was announced, it felt like it kind of took the gaming world at least by storm. Like everyone was super excited about the game and hyped. And then when it eventually came out, it released to glowing reviews. What was your reaction to the game's overall reception?
I mean, I was delighted. I just thought, I got to become really close with all the people at Hazelight. Not every single person, but, every time we went to Stockholm, we were like, the men in suits, basically, or the men and women in suits who used to come and parade around the office every so often and, have lunch with them all. And we kind of got to, certainly the core team, especially, became friends, I would say. And we became really sort of close. And I just, me and Annabelle both loved that job so much and loved the characters so much. And, I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And they don't play games, but, I hope one day they will. And I'll be like, that's what I do when I was a youngster. But, I was so happy that Joseph, his vision got realized into such a sort of close proximity to what he always set out to do. I think that was just hugely impressive. And I think all the guys who worked on the game and the women were they're all just such geniuses. I think every department at Hazelight,
Mm-hmm.
like I've said before, I think they're all wizards. I think they just did such an incredible job, and I think it was a labor of love. And I think you can see that in the game, and I think that people's response to it is just a reflection of all that love that was poured into that game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can definitely tell from playing it. It's a story. It's got a lot of heart. And it's also, told in a super creative way. Have you played the game yourself? And if so, outside of obviously flexing your co-op puzzle solving skills, what elements of the story do you hope stick with people who have played the game?
I've only played it at a friend's house because I don't have a games console in my house. So I played it at my sister's house, and her boyfriend is a big gamer. And so Hazelight sent me a copy of the game. And
mm-hmm.
So I was like, I got it. So, I don't play a lot of computer games. I have to be honest. I don't play a lot. I used to. And I just sort of had kids, and I just don't find the time anymore. And so it's the first game I've actually physically played that I've ever done. And I've been doing them for a long time now. So that was a very strange experience, I have to say, as well, because obviously I was invested in the cutscene side of it, or the story side of it.
Mm-hmm.
The game, it was really fun. Like I just had so much fun. I was not great at it, but I think that's one of the really amazing things about it, is that it's very forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
You know how like when you fuck up, basically you just come right back, and you kind of don't get so frustrated. And I think the way that it forces you to engage with the other person in the room is just a piece of genius, because I think it's something that, I think gaming can become, I suppose you can become quite separate from other people because they become voices,
Mm-hmm.
They're not physical people in the room with you normally, or often anyway, or you play by yourself or whatever, and this you literally can't do this unless someone else is there. So I think that makes it kind of unique, and it makes, I think the thing that I hope stays with people, and I hope people will just continue playing it even if they've already completed it, is because it forces you to sort of have an engagement with someone else. And I think that, without sounding too kind of old-fashioned and like corny, I think people don't, for all the social media and all the tech that we have to communicate, people don't actually communicate that well. And
there's timing and all sorts of things involved in this game. Yeah,
and this game just forces you to have an engagement with someone else through the vessel of the game. And I think that's just magic, actually. I think that's just a piece of genius storytelling and gameplay, and it sort of really is a marriage of all the things that are wonderful about gaming, fun, and there's a very cohesive story that runs through it, which also makes you care more about getting to the end,
Mm-hmm.
your investment in those characters. I remember having a conversation with Joseph about, he had a real bugbear about people not completing games, and he always said, I don't want this to be a game that people don't have to complete. And I think that's maybe one reason why, they wanted it to make it forgiving, in that sense that you could complete it without necessarily, it wasn't so hard that you couldn't get there if you just persevered a bit.
Right.
And I don't know if I answered your question. I probably didn't, but
no, I think so.
Yeah, I think just being able to have a real connection with someone else while you do this, while you play the game, is hopefully what makes it an enduring game.
Yeah, we found this game to be our Saturday night couples time. Every weekend we would, come together and clock in a couple hours and enjoy ourselves. So, any advice to our listeners out there who may want to pursue a voice acting career?
Let me see. So, I think the best thing you can do is have a voice reel. I think that's the one thing that you need above all else. Whether you make it yourself or you're able to pay a professional to do it, there are probably even famous people who don't really work as voice artists as such, but maybe like do commercials. Even they have a voice reel. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's the one tool that facilitates you getting work and facilitates you getting an agent. And I think there's lots of ways now to work in the voiceover industry without having an agent, because there's so many different platforms where you can, just post your particular skill set up. But I think for all of those things, you need to have a voice reel, and it needs to be slick as you can make it. And so I think that's my best advice. I mean, I think you just got to have luck as well. But I think that goes for anything in this industry in terms of performance. I don't think anyone makes it without a slice of luck somewhere along the way.
Yeah, a little bit of chance.
It just is. And unfortunately, no matter how talented you are or whatever, you just need a bit of luck sometimes. And so, whether it's kissing the shamrock or whatever, you just got to be lucky. Be lucky and keep smiling and keep trying, really. And eventually something will give.
I'll include a video of my hip gyrating skills in my voice reel.
Please.
A little bit extra.
I think that's essential. I think that a hip gyration should be an essential part of anyone's voice reel.
So, kind of wrapping up a little bit, what's next for you? Any upcoming projects you can share? I know you just recently tweeted about Battlefield. Anything you can tell us about that, maybe?
The only thing I'm allowed to tell you about that is that I'm in it. Sadly. But yeah, the trailer and a lot of additional bits and pieces just dropped this weekend. So I was tweeting sort of sheepishly, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be cool. I mean, I'm still sort of in the midst of that, but I've done the bulk of it now, and that was intense. So it's intense. Battlefield is intense. It's a very
very different from It Takes Two.
Very different from It Takes Two. Although they're both, DICE used to share an office with Hazelight, and they're now both under the umbrella of EA as well. So they're both Swedish game development companies, so I guess they have something in common, but I think that's about it. Everything else is different. That was very different. It was not quite so much character story there, but it was it was cool. It was a very different thing. It was a very different thing altogether. But unfortunately, that's all I can say. Other than I think it's going to be equally, like, people who like that kind of game are going to really love it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what we saw this weekend looked really cool. So
yeah, and the tiny bits that I have been shown from the guys at DICE looks pretty shit hot. So I think that people are going to be excited when that finally comes out. Other than that, game wise, I'm working on a couple of things, but unfortunately I can't. These days we're all tied in knots with NDA agreements, sadly, and
right.
It seems like when the big man tells us we can speak, then we try and shout as loud as we can about stuff. But I'm working on a couple of other projects in terms of games, and I've been working on going into cartoons recently, which has been amazing.
Oh, cool!
A new Netflix series called Big Tree City, which is going to be fun, and also another show for Nickelodeon. Again, I can't say a lot, sadly, but they've been so much fun, and they are much more in the scope of It Takes Two. And there's some Hispanic characters there coming to show their face. I think I've been really pleased that, I've been able to sort of live that part of my heritage in my work. It's been great. It's been great. I feel like in voiceover, one of the magic things about it is that it doesn't matter what you look like. Mm-hmm. And it feels much more a meritocracy in a way than film and television, because film and television is it's a very aesthetic medium. And so if people decide that you don't look a certain way, then you're not going to get the opportunity to be that thing. Mm-hmm. And in voiceover, that just gets wiped away. So
the world is more your oyster.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that, more and more as I've got older, I enjoy my voiceover work, dare I say, more than my front of camera work. I just think it's so much more imaginative and liberating. And, the stories I get to tell tend to be much more expansive and interesting and diverse and not just pigeonholed and stereotyped. So I really feel that I'm very lucky to have that avenue of work available to me and open to me currently. I'm really, really enjoying it. And and I did an animated feature called Tad Jones. I did the sequel, in fact, and it's a Spanish animation company, and I'm working on Tad 3 currently, and I play a character called the Mummy, who's from Peru, but actually sounds like she's from the Bronx. So that's a fun job too. So those little things are ticking over, and there's a couple of movies that I was in, which will hopefully be released next year. I did the Batman movie. Again, I can't say anything about that other than that I was in it. But if you don't blink during the trailer of the Batman movie, I'm in it.
Awesome. We'll have to check it out again and now listen very closely for you.
Exactly.
Speaking of superheroes, we've asked this of all of our guests on the show, sort of assembling our own podcast Avengers. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, it would definitely be flying, I think, for sure. If I could, I'd fly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really useful one. And also, like you can go anywhere, you can see anything and kind of get that nice bird's eye view and see things from a different perspective.
Exactly that. I mean, what could be better? Invisibility would be cool, I think, as well, just so you could, make sure people weren't talking shit about you behind your back. But I think flying would trump it for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, flying. I mean, what could be better than flying? I don't know. What about you guys? What would you have?
Mine, I feel like it changes from time to time, but recently I settled on wanting to be able to talk to and understand animals. I feel like that could be really useful.
Oh, yes. Dr. Dolittle vibes.
Yeah. I'm not sure when I'd ever be stuck in a jungle somewhere by myself with crazy wild animals coming at me, but I feel like that'd be useful in those kind of situations.
It would. If a lion's running after you, you could tell it some jokes maybe.
Yep.
I would always be time control because I like to sleep and I just physically don't have enough time in the day.
Yeah, I hear you. Have you got kids?
No, I can only imagine how much harder that'll be to do things on top of career.
Mate, you have no idea. Oh my God. I dream of the days before when I used to not use my time very efficiently. I've now realized. But yeah, time control would be pretty sweet too, actually, especially at the moment. Yeah, they're all good shouts, actually. Maybe if you could coalesce all of that into one superpower.
Then you'd have a Superman situation who's overpowered.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Joseph, for your time today. We really enjoyed this chat with you, and we know our listeners definitely did too. Appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Take it easy.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. We want to thank Joseph Balderrama again for that interview, and we now return you to our regularly scheduled podcasting. And now I'm in the room. I wasn't around for that interview. My name is Illeagle86. You know me if you've listened to the podcast. I am, of course, joined by Nerdbomber and Techtic, still here, catching their breath after that interview. How you guys doing over there?
That was a great interview, man.
Good times, good times.
Good times were had by all. You don't sound like you're catching your breath. You sound like you're full-winded, so we can get into some news, which is good. We have some topics lined up for this week. Honestly, all of us catching our breath a little bit after last week's marathon E3 session. This isn't going to be anything like that. That was a big boy. There's a lot going on. We do have some gaming news that I want to lead with, and you'll understand why I want to lead with it in just a second after I describe it to you, basically. There is some rumor milling happening about the upcoming EA Play Live event, which is scheduled to be on July 22nd. And purportedly, there were rumors that an established IP is going to be revived by EA's Motive Studio. Now, if any of you know me, you know that my ears immediately perked up. Do ears perk up? Have your ears ever perked up before?
I think so. We've been watching New Girl again. And one of the first things that I notice every time I watch the show is the character Schmidt. He is very emotive and expressive with his ears, more so than like any other actor I've ever seen. So I do believe your ears can visibly perk up when you hear something.
Because isn't it? I think it's like genetic. Like only a certain number of people can like move their ears just like by force of will kind of thing. I don't know if I'm one of those people.
I'm one of those people.
You're one of those people?
I can move all sorts of body parts in all sorts of weird ways. And I'm going to let you guys use your imagination on that one.
Ooh.
Move your ears right now.
He's doing it. They're wiggling.
I can't see it, but I'm imagining it, and it's absolutely fabulous. So my ears perked up. We just found ourselves in a little cul-de-sac there conversationally, but my ears perked up, and that's because I am one of the world's biggest Dead Space fans. And lo and behold, what was initially a rumor about a quote-unquote established IP has now been, I would say, more or less confirmed to be a reimagining, and that's again quote-unquote, of Dead Space. So the original developer of Dead Space, Visceral Games, they died circa 2017.
No pun intended.
There's other puns here. I actually want to get to the original kind of tease that was given. GamesBeat journalist Jeff Grubb commented in a video stream on Friday that an unannounced EA title will be shown publicly for the first time on July 22nd, and he said, and I quote, "I think you'll be happy." And then on Tuesday he teased, "We're going to see it if we're not dead first." So everyone was like, okay, Dead Space.
I enjoyed the first quote. "I think you'll be happy." Oh my gosh.
It's not a very creative use of wordplay, right? He was kind of just giving it away. But
the second one for sure.
This is a huge deal. Now, also, I want to talk about the timing because the timing is very strange. Now, first of all, EA's Motive Studio thing they came out with most recently, and I think most famously, Star Wars Squadrons, which incidentally I have not finished yet. I'd actually only just started it, and then I put it down for various reasons. I'm planning to revisit it at some point, especially now. But
I'm planning to revisit it after Techtic builds me a nice little HOTAS thing with his 3D printer for my controller. I don't know why I pronounced it that way, but I did.
What were you trying to? I don't understand. What?
It's basically a flight stick attachment. It's got like the little like lever thing to accelerate and decelerate, and then it's got the
yoke.
Okay.
The yoke.
The yoke. I want to talk about the Callisto Protocol because I don't know when this was. Sometime in the past year. Time is a construct. The Callisto Protocol was a game that we got a trailer for last year. And it was it looks like you're in a space prison. It's very scary. Helmed by the chief development officer for the original EA franchise for Dead Space, and took a lot of other Dead Space veterans with him to get it going. So a lot of the original team is working on something else. That something else is purportedly coming very soon. And then EA was like, whoa, wait, we should do it too. It's very interesting. I'm not complaining, to be clear. That's the last thing I'm doing. But it's very interesting timing because for whatever it was, like 8 years, the franchise was dead, and now there's going to be 2. Kind of Christmas morning for me, also a little confusing. So I guess the question I have to lead with, Nerdbomber, is it finally time? Do you think you're emotionally, physically, do you think your bladder and your bowels can withstand the fear?
Look, I think it might be time for me to go back and revisit it, especially since I know you've kind of thought about going back and revisiting Mass Effect. Maybe in honor of that, I should go back and try playing Dead Space, although 1 is very scary and 1 is not.
You can't do it in honor of him considering.
Right.
He has to do it, and then you'll do it.
I totally agree with Techtic. Don't do it till I do it. It's like a pact,
blood
pinky promise kind of thing.
But I think I could probably, if the new one comes out, I could probably get on board with trying it just because, I don't know, maybe it'll be just as scary.
Now.
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't matter though. Now the graphics are more realistic than ever before, and that's just
do what you do with other scary games. You play a little bit, and then you look at me and go, "This part's too scary, you do it." And then I'll do it. And we'll hit it together.
We'll do it.
The Evil Within, it was actually really funny, and this is a tangent, but Techtic, for whatever reason, and you had known me. We had dated for 5 years at this point. You should have known.
You guys dated?
Yeah. Surprise.
I thought he just came up. I thought I just walked up to you on the street and proposed to you. But anyways, go
Will
on.
you podcast and marry me? But yeah, so like 5 years in, I don't know what compelled him to do this, but he bought me The Evil Within and was like, Merry Christmas.
Hilarity. That's what it was.
And so
Which is like marketed as a scary game. Like it's not
Yeah.
a hidden scary game.
it's a
like-
horror game. And I think I played it for half an hour.
So what kind of game?
Horror.
Horror.
And then I handed you the controller, and I think you ended up playing the rest of it. So, yeah. I mean, it was bonding, I guess, because we sat together and played together, but I did not have a good time.
Now, do you let's get physiological with this. When you hand the controller to Techtic, does he have to go get like a dish towel and like are you
No, I'm
sweaty
not.
palms?
I
Are
get
those a thing
clammy.
for you?
I don't get sweaty.
Okay.
I'm just like, I get cold and I don't like it.
I sweat.
I'm not
I-
sweaty.
What's the most relaxing game you've ever played ever?
Oh boy. I don't like relaxing when I play games. I know that sounds weird, but
Insert that game here, and
Animal
I am
Crossing.
profusely sweating playing that game.
okay, so you're always your hands because of the tactile motion, your hands are just
I do
waterfalling.
everything with full intensity. It doesn't matter how intense the game is.
See, this is a weird.
Okay, fair enough.
I think I'm just weird physiologically in general, because like even if I'm working out, like I can run like crazy or bike at high intensity for like 40 minutes, and I don't really sweat. Like
No
I'll
sweat.
kind of glisten a little bit, but I'm not like pouring sweat buckets like most people normally would be. I think it's just like a weird
she
thing.
shimmers. She shimmers, guys. You wouldn't believe it.
Like an anime character, it shimmer a little bit.
But you get clammy.
Yeah, like it's
We
not
don't need
like
to get
a-
into this.
Yeah.
We're there. So-
Yeah, he doesn't have to wipe off my controller, basically.
Okay.
I
Well,
have to wear gamer gloves when I use her controller, though.
the frustrating thing for me is that what I would really like to do is Dead Space is great. It was a great game. It is a great game. Present tense, it's not dead. A lot of things are dead in Dead Space. You have to fight them. But Dead Space 2 is a masterpiece. It's one of those things where like you're not necessarily playing Dead Space just to get to Dead Space 2, but if you get through Dead
Kind of.
Space, the fun has just begun, and the fun's going to get a lot more funner
It's
because Dead Space
honestly-
2 is
It might be an
Just really
EA thing because that's how Mass Effect was. Like the first one was good,
Yeah.
but like the second one was peak Mass Effect, and both EA properties. Maybe they just hit their stride at the sequel.
I don't know. Another thing that we could get into, although without you guys having played the games, it's hard for you to get too deep into it. But when they say reimagining, obviously a lot comes to mind. You don't know what exactly they mean. I don't want to drop any spoilers about the original trilogy, especially about the third game, which was decidedly the worst of the three. But there's a lot that could be. I mean, Dead Space kind of created this atmosphere that could be easily replicated with any protagonist on any planet or any, derelict space freighter. There are aspects of kind of the general backstory in terms of the religious cult that surrounds a lot of the horrific events that happen in all three games that they will probably, I imagine that's what they're talking about. They're going to maybe delve into that a little bit. But I'll be curious to see. EA Play was not even really on my radar as an event to watch, but it sure is now. And that's, I'm sure, what their goal was here. And mission accomplished.
So my question for you, kind of as the biggest Dead Space fan that I know, quite frankly,
Thank you.
would you rather see basically like almost like a remaster where same character and everything, it's just kind of like revisited, redone, and brought up to speed? Kind of like, I hesitate to call Doom 2016 like a remaster, but like almost, like basically same story premise and everything, same core mechanics, just like brought up to the latest generation? Or do you want to see a new storyline, maybe not necessarily even a new protagonist, but like just in the future revisiting the story?
So it's a great question. I think I've mentioned on the podcast before that I am generally a huge fan of remasters, and this is really no exception. I actually do think if the question is reimagining or just kind of a remaster, I want the remaster. Like Dead Space the trilogy was so perfect for me that if they just remastered it, improved the graphics, maybe added a handful of things on top of the existing base experience, I would be happy as a clam. Now, I imagine most of the people who are wanting this probably are not like me, but I'm all about remasters. I'm all about taking a trip down memory lane with improvements. And I don't know, throw the question back at you, like, has your experience with Mass Effect, I mean, they are coming out with a continuation of something. I don't know anything about Mass Effect, but if you had to choose that or the remaster, which would you choose?
Well, I think so. I've kind of lived the entire cycle with Mass Effect. Like Andromeda came out, which was kind of a new take on the story, like new protagonist, everything, far future.
Right.
And it was okay, but it didn't. Mass Effect is such a character-driven game that not having those same characters really felt like you were missing something. So as long as there's a continuation of the same characters, I'm on board. So like going back and replaying the Legendary Edition was a lot of fun because obviously the same cast of characters are there, and I'm assuming the next game that comes out, obviously they're hinting there will be a lot of character overlaps again, which I'm excited for. In a game where I don't know if character is as important, it didn't sound like, I feel like it could be done really well, like a Resident Evil 2 remake, where you bring it up to speed, you bring all the latest technology, and you keep like the core characters and story. And I feel like that would be just as good, especially if you, like, I'm trying to think, if you played on like PlayStation 4, I don't think there was a way to play Dead Space. I know Xbox had the backwards compatibility, but like there's a whole generation of people who didn't get to experience Dead Space, and it could be cool for them to hop in and pretty much get the same story, but just at a freshened up version. So I think that could be cool and work.
But if you had to pick what I was asking about Mass Effect, you had to pick the remaster that you currently have or the continuation. It sounds like you would pick the continuation, but only if the characters overlapped.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think you can't have one without the other. I think the refresh is an important step to not only expanding on the new fan base, but also, I mean, the span at which they release these games are so far between where you really need that refresher to jump back into the world, or you're going to end up watching a 20-minute YouTube video. But heck, I'd much rather play through them again than spend the 20 minutes on YouTube.
Right. And I also, like, I want to caveat, like, I don't want to sell short. I know I said you kind of just stick any protagonist in there. Isaac Clarke is a fantastic protagonist. I think Dead Space does have some really great character work in all three of the games. Dead Space 2, again, most predominantly. But again, I think that's probably a significantly more malleable aspect of the experience than is such with Mass Effect, as you said. So in that sense of reimagining, that might be the significant thrust of the reimagining. It may be Dead Space with a female protagonist, which I would be super on board with. It may be Dead Space on Earth, on board with that too, because they never really got to that in the Dead Space trilogy. They stayed far afield, I think, on purpose. So there's a lot they could do, and I'm obviously super, super looking forward to seeing what they come up with. So if you are a Dead Space fan like myself, first of all, it's great just to know you. But second of all, at OW Illeagle86, at OW Techtic, at OW Nerdbomber, our main show account, at Online Warriors 1, what do you want to see from a Dead Space reimagining? Or do you just want to see a remaster? Are you hoping they don't mean this reimagining word too imaginatively, I guess? Let us know. Come over, have a conversation with us. Hit us up. Slide into don't slide into the DMs. Just tweet at us regularly. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. I've only sent like 3 DMs in my life, so I don't know how it works. Anyways, we can move into our next topic. Let's talk about movies. Let's move away from games. We got the gaming out of the way. We game talked all week last week. Let's talk about movies. Let's talk about Steven Spielberg. Now, some of you may recall, this might have been last year again. Again, time's a construct.
And being a jerk.
Being a jerk. Being kind of a jerk. Basically saying movies that are produced for streaming platforms, most predominantly Netflix, should not be eligible for Oscars. He basically said, once you commit to a TV format, you're a TV movie. Well, they say, if you can't beat them, join them. Steven Spielberg's joining them. More specifically, the director's studio Amblin Partners and Netflix have reached a deal that will see the company produce new feature films for the streaming service. This is the next in a line of a lot of quote-unquote film purists like Martin Scorsese with The Irishman, kind of entering the fold with Netflix. For us, my take is that this can only be good, because we get more movies that are easily watched on Netflix. The streamer expects Amblin to produce at least 2 films a year for its library for an unspecified amount of years. So this is exciting. This is the latest kind of win for Netflix. What I'm looking forward to seeing is what's the kind of retaliatory strike from one or multiple other streaming platforms, right? This is the streaming wars are ongoing. It's a big get. Steven Spielberg is obviously Steven Spielberg. You heard it here first, folks. Steven Spielberg is Steven Spielberg. He's still Steven Spielberg. And Netflix got him, so who's going to go out and get James Cameron? Who's going to go out and get Quentin Tarantino? Who's going to go out and get Christopher Nolan? You know, I don't think Christopher Nolan can be gotten by anybody. It seems like he also really hates streaming services. But again, if you can't beat him, you have to join him. I think that's a little punchline to say that here, but
I mean, I think it's interesting because I want to say that quote that he gave was a pre-COVID world. And one of the things, and this is just general speak, is that I think as a whole, we need to normalize if someone has an opinion and they change their mind, that's okay. As long as the original opinion wasn't like terrible and harmful. But even if it was, if you change your mind, that's like that's the human growth, you know?
Yeah,
we're always
growing as a person.
Yeah, you're learning, you're growing, you're getting new information and using that to inform your opinions moving forward. And I think, especially in the last year and a half or so, you know, seeing how important streaming services really were to the movie industry, it basically kept some movie studios afloat by buying some of those movies that were supposed to be in theaters and just couldn't release. You know, I mean, Netflix single-handedly, and even like Amazon, I know with the Tomorrow War, which I believe comes out next week, like that was supposed to be a big blockbuster movie, and they basically more or less saved it by buying it. And I think it's just between saving the studios, saving people's sanity, I think people are starting to change their mind. I don't know how that bodes for the movie industry, though. Like, I don't know. You're basically taking one of the biggest players in movies and delegating him more or less to streaming at this point. Like, right.
Well, and this should be differentiated from. So, like, I'm going to talk about HBO Max later in my update for this week. They are doing kind of side along releases that are simultaneous on HBO Max and in theaters. I doubt Netflix is doing that here, although I think they may have done that with The Irishman.
I think they've done like limited releases where in select movie theaters, they'll release the movie for like a week or two so that they have a red carpet experience for the movie, but it's nowhere near the same level as a regular theater release.
Right. I think there's a certain amount of a certain subset of movie watchers, which to an extent movie watchers are everybody, but I think there's a subset of those people that are always going to want to see certain movies in theaters, and they're going to want that theater experience. And I do think that there is a place for that entire industry to survive. And I say that as someone who, you know, when all of the, you know, COVID hubbub dies down, I will even though there are many, many movies for me to stream. I mean, think about pre-pandemic. There were so many movies, Oscar-winning, award-winning movies that I could stream from my couch, a lot of them probably for free. But I decided, no, I'm going to go to the theater and I'm going to watch, you know, Toy Story 4, which by the way was great. But like, I think in a world that's so full of movie choices, you shouldn't theoretically be chipping too much away from the theater industry by just saying Steven Spielberg's gonna you know, move to Netflix.
I do wonder if, considering his initial stance on it, if there's some verbiage in his contract that says that all of the movies shall be simultaneously released between theaters and Netflix.
It's possible. It doesn't say here, so I'm not sure. But he's also, I'm sure, looking out for like, do these count for Oscar? I mean, they did when he was complaining about it, so I'm sure they do. But I don't know. Like, I do question to what extent this is a harbinger for the movie theater industry. I certainly hope the movie theater industry survives. It certainly has struggled, and you know, rightly so. People like to dunk on the movie theater industry because the popcorn's expensive.
See, I don't. I think the movie theater industry just needs to adapt. And like,
yes.
So one of the things, and obviously from our wonderful accents, we're in America, but I know we do have listeners in other countries. And one of the things that I did not realize that is actually very prevalent in other countries is like the movie theater experience, where you go to a theater and you're not just sitting there eating overpriced popcorn. You have dinner. You can have a glass of wine or a beer and watch a movie.
There are theaters like that here in the US of A, baby. You've never been to one of those?
They're very few and far between, though. At least any place that I've been to or visited, there hasn't been one.
I've only been to a full service, like actually get dinner movie theater once, and I saw X-Men Apocalypse, which, if you haven't seen it, is maybe the most average movie of all time.
But that dinner probably elevated the experience.
The only dinner that I've seen at theaters is what I like to call the burrito experience. And that's when people smuggle burritos in their winter coat and just have a full-on meal stretched out in front of them.
Dude, I was at a theater once and I saw someone was wearing like a winter hat, and out of their winter hat, they pulled a McDonald's cheeseburger. And I was like, man, kind of clever.
A good move.
Keeps your head warm.
Right.
I feel like it'd be a weird moist heat. I would not be a fan.
Serves a dual purpose. But I mean, AMC, if you want to get semantical, AMC, they sell like hot dogs, don't they?
Yeah, but that's not the
They're
same.
Not good. Yeah,
those are like 7-Eleven dogs. They've been like on that roller for God knows how long.
Hey, don't bring 7-Eleven into this. I get what you mean, full service theaters. But I think there are certain movie theaters that do things differently that are very popular and will never die. And an example of that is ArcLight, which that's only in California. I've never been to California, so I've never been to the ArcLight. But the ArcLight is supposed to be this very different theater where there are always people watching to make sure no one's on their phones. They always come out. They have a worker come out and introduce the movie beforehand, and they're always monitoring. I was just listening to another podcast about this where someone was talking about how particular the ArcLight is about making sure that the cinematic experience is absolutely as perfect as it can be. And you have places like Alamo Drafthouse, which I think do some of the food and beverage service, and they're also very popular. And you have these kind of niche, I don't want to call them boutique theaters, but they're...
the local establishments, at least by us, I will say top notch. A lot of them are in old-timey theaters, which they've preserved.
Yeah.
So your seating maybe isn't the most comfortable. You're not going to get that nice leather recliner, but they have gourmet popcorn that's and it's reasonably priced. It's not chain pricing. And they do they have great service, and they have the whole little intermission thing with the little window inside the theater. So you don't even have to leave to go get popcorn.
Oh.
And I mean, it's a great top-notch little experience. So I think there's, like you said, a place for theater. I think we'll just have to start seeing the bigger chains adapt a little bit if they want to stay in the game.
And spoiler alert, they are not going to. There's probably no chance, but it's fun to
you
think
never
about.
know. They did start introducing Movie Pass. I know that was a flash in the pan, but hey, they introduced a subscription model, which if you go to the movies enough, AMC, I don't know what the AMC one is called, but Regal Ticket and AMC Ticket, whatever. If you see enough movies, you get your money's worth.
I was on Stubbs A-list for a while. It was working out for me, and then the funniest thing happened. The world shut down. But Movie Pass is I talked about it on the podcast 100 times. I loved Movie Pass. It was the greatest thing ever.
I still have my card.
Some coked up hedge fund idiot, I'm sorry, funded all of our irresponsible movie habits for a summer. And we made the best of it, and the company went under because obviously it did. Thinking back to Movie Pass,
it was a glorious summer.
What were they thinking? What were they thinking? It was the greatest summer of my life. It was amazing.
Well, it was because if you even saw one movie, you came out positive. The cost of Movie Pass didn't even cover a movie ticket. It was confusing as all get out, but it was
Movie
great.
Pass. It's one of those things where 50 years from now,
we'll be 80.
We'll be 80.
Day.
First of all, you're bringing up the unfun part first, but
Sorry.
I'll be sitting at a campfire with my grandkids, and I'll be let me tell you about the summer of Movie Pass, and I'll explain it to them, and they'll be no one knows what you're talking about, Grandpa. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
That's why you have to save your card. That's why I have mine. And then in 50 years, I can be this is a totem from one of the best movie summers of my life.
It's $10 a month for unlimited. Shut up, Grandpa. If I was a kid and I heard that, it's it's like when you hear your current grandpa or just an older person be we used to go to the soda fountain and get ice cream for 5 cents. You're what are you talking about? It's going to be the same thing, although a little bit more coked up and weird. The ice cream thing is just inflation. Movie Pass was just a bad idea. Anyways.
Did it off the lazy Jim model, and that's why, but yeah.
Anyways, Steven Spielberg joining up with Netflix. Big things to come for Amblin Partners and Netflix. Who knows? E.T. 2. It's possible. I really doubt it. I think that book has kind of been closed, but we'll see. So that brings us to our break. But before we go to the break and shout out one of our sponsors, we of course also have to shout out our fantastic Patreon producers, Mr. Ben Checkness, Mr. Stephen Keller. Take a bow. We would be remiss if we did not thank you for all of your stalwart patronage to the podcast, keeping the lights on, keeping the generators running. We don't use generators. This isn't like post-apocalyptic, but you get the idea.
Actually, I do. I have like a fleet of hamsters, and they're keeping the lights on over here. I'll run on their little wheels.
And you guys are what helps us purchase the hamster food. I don't know what hamsters eat. You get the idea. Stephen and Ben support us on Patreon at the highest of our 3 tiers of support, and that is the night level. And as a result, they get access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, as well as this producer's shout out and input into our weekly game segment. They also guested on the show recently. Go back, check those episodes out. Hear us chat with them. It's a good time. You can also support us at the Squire level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. And there's also a page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So the details on all of those tiers of support and how to get back to the show can be found at patreon.com/online warriors podcast. Go check us out there. Thanks again to Stephen and Ben. And we will take a short break now to shout out one of our sponsors and be right back to talk to you all about Boston Dynamics. Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co. And be sure to add our podcast, Online Warriors, in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application. Thanks again to Podgo. Now back to the episode. All right, you know what we're talking about here. You are on Twitter. You're on Facebook, maybe. You're scrolling. It's late at night, and you stop scrolling because you see a freaky movie of a robotic dog, or like a robotic headless humanoid that kind of like jumps up some stairs all weird and like rights itself when someone pushes it.
Yeah, and they're just getting abused by people.
They're getting whacked with like hockey sticks and stuff. They're getting cross-checked. It's a whole thing. Boston Dynamics is the company that puts together these robots. Again, you've probably seen some of their videos. I don't know what the names of the robots are off the top of my head, but
Steve.
What I do know is Steve might have been it. I was thinking Sunny, but that's for my robot. Anyways, this company has been purchased, and you probably know the company that bought them. And I shouldn't say bought them. They acquired a controlling stake in the company. There might be some semantics there that I don't actually understand, but I drive a Hyundai, actually. I'm a proud owner of a Hyundai Elantra, and Hyundai went ahead and completed its acquisition of Boston Dynamics, the innovative robotics company valued at $1.1 billion. This deal was announced in late 2020 and has now been put to rest. I shouldn't say put to rest. It happened. It's over. So I want to spin it over to our Tinkerman. Do you mind if I call you a Tinkerman, Techtic?
I don't think I like the connotations of that one.
Well, you're okay.
Why not?
It sounds like Tinkleman, and not a fan.
All right, fair enough. I'm going to kick it over to our Tinkleman, Techtic, and he can explain to us, maybe, I don't know what he's going to say,
why we should be excited about this.
Yeah, what this means for Boston Dynamics. What does it mean for Hyundai? What does it mean for your Elantra, your Sonata, or for your robot dog?
It means a lot for your robot dog, and let me explain why that's so exciting. So even under the ownership of Google, Boston Dynamics has kind of remained in the R&D sector, and it's just been furthering their technology and establishing a sort of autonomous foothold, and that was it in that. And I'm going to be vague for purposeful reasons.
Putting out cool videos. That was like their main product.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we did this thing. It's still in development, but look at this.
And the acquisition by Hyundai drives moving all of this excellent R&D into commercialization. And so here we go, robot dog.
So we're getting robot dogs.
But more importantly, their focus is going to be in the automation market and manufacturing side of it. So maybe not a robot dog immediately in your home, but if you're in a warehouse or something, you're going to be working alongside some robot dogs, which is really, really cool. And I think we should be excited about that. And not only that, but there's going to be all new maintenance jobs to support these robots. And it's just going to, I think, elevate the industry into the future. And I'm really excited for what that could bring.
Do you think?
Jinx.
Why don't you say what? That's our like fifth jinx.
I do think. Good question, guys. Good question.
Nerdbomber can ask you what you think first, and I'll ask you what I think after that. So Nerdbomber, take it away.
Do you think there's any applications into vehicles? Like, do you think, because one of the things that I've always thought was astounding whenever I see a Boston Dynamics video of a robot is they have a lot of like stability. And
they write themselves.
Yeah. Do you think there's any applications in cars? And I know you're not in the auto industry or anything like that. And this is all purely speculation. So no, we're not insiders by any means into the automotive industry or crazy robot dogs. But Techtic, like, do you see as like the technology guru any impact on what we can see in cars?
Before you answer, Techtic, I love how she said you're a technology guru, but you have no idea what you're talking about. Just whatever he says right now is just going to be nonsense.
I think you guys will concur with what I say.
We're not industry insiders. We're speculating.
No. So from a vehicular standpoint, I don't see it as a wide-based commercial, but definitely I see a strong foot in the military sector because there's already been talks with the dog robots being in the military sector as far as cargo carrying for long hikes and things like that. But as far as vehicles that people would physically drive, I don't think the dog is a good choice, but rather, and hear me out, something along the lines of a spider bot, because now you've kind of constrained all access. You've got your side-to-side stability, and since they have a long torso, generally for multi-man carrying, the extra, we'll call it 2 extra feet on the front and the back, will give you that added flip stability, which I could definitely see occurring in the military sector.
Wait, so you're saying spider cars? I just want to clarify.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Dude, could you imagine if you were, because like cars can sense when you're either about to collide with another vehicle because they have all those sensors now. Could you imagine if like random spider arms just kind of like shot out of the side of your car and prevented you from flipping? How sweet
Iron
would
Spider,
that be?
like the Iron Spider.
Exactly.
Super cool. What I was going to ask, kind of similar questioning. I mean, what motivated Hyundai's purchase here? Do you think they want the business for, like, part of me is like they just want to like have robot dogs at the Hyundai factory?
No,
like,
I think it's
cars.
Well, yes, in their factory, but yes, to answer your question, yes, I think it's mainly driven by the commercial automation sector. That's where they want to get a really good foothold as manufacturing continues to evolve.
Right. I mean, you know, if all the robots efficiently make the cars and people are around with jobs to maintain the robots, we all win because the car is probably cheaper. Probably, I don't want to say better made because humans are good at making cars too, but
yeah, I don't think it's their jobs are going to be replaced. I think it's going to be an assistant sort of role,
right,
where it makes the ergonomics issues minimal and helps protect the worker as well as helps them out.
Hey, robot dog, toss me that wrench. That kind of thing. Very exciting stuff. Looking forward to seeing more and probably seeing more videos, this time with the Hyundai logo, probably just, watermarked somewhere so we all know.
Techtic, I'm disappointed. You did not say your trademark. No one
I think he did.
is diversifying their portfolio?
Did he say it earlier in the episode? I could have sworn he said it at some point.
No, I didn't. I didn't want to. I want to keep you guys on your toes.
Darn.
Nerdbomber's all the way up on them toes. She just couldn't be more confused. I decided to roll with it. If anyone has any portfolio diversification questions, direct them to Techtic, but he's not going to say it right now. He's not feeling it. But yeah, Boston Dynamics, Hyundai made a deal. Robot spider cars coming soon? ? TBD.
Golly gee, I hope so.
Golly gee, why don't we move into the What Are You Up To Wednesday segment, which we were unfortunately forced to skip last week, again, because of E3 extravaganza, also known as E4, because there's 4 E's instead of 3. And I'm going to swing it over to my man, Techtic. Take us to What Are You Up To land. Lead on.
Okay. So I got a couple big updates. The first one is I started playing Biomutant. And first and foremost, I thought that because I pre-ordered, I'd get the cool extra class DLC. And apparently it was only if you pre-ordered the digital version. Shame on me for not reading and go ahead and pre-ordering the hard copy. But you know what? I'm not mad about it. I picked what I like to equate to as the biotic class. and I'm relating it to Mass Effect because everyone knows and loves Mass Effect. But it's an awesome game. It actually reminds me a lot of Mass Effect, but more of a platformer version of it. And you have the different classes. You have basically the Paragon versus Renegade, and you can pick a story beat that you want to travel down. It's a really fun game. So I do recommend it thus far. It's a little slow at times, but all in all, it's a good game.
In terms of combat, what sort of combat is it? I mean, I've obviously seen videos, but like, are you forced into using guns? Are you forced into using like blades, depending on what class you chose, or can you kind of like free flow?
So you have a very vast weapon customization option between like hammer fist things to weapons to different shooters, and then you can also customize your unique mutations, and it really makes every character unique to the player. So that's what I really, really liked about that option, and I'm glad you asked about it. So I do recommend it, guys. You can make your player your own, and you can get weird with it. I've got weird mushroom things that I generate and jump on because it's fun. The other thing is I put together and started playing around with my 3D printer. And let me tell you, folks, that is very exciting for me. It's a bit of a learning curve between leveling it and optimizing your build plate to get the best adhesion for starting it. But once you kind of get it honed in, man, the world is your oyster.
Are you going to 3D print a 2D printer? Because that would be the first thing I would do.
I'm going to 3D print a Spider-Man and Iron Man face shield or shell or whatever you want to call it.
Okay. Pretty cool. I'm into that. Also consider 3D printing a 4D printer, which prints in all space dimensions and then also prints in time. I don't know. I'll leave that up to your imagination what that exactly looks like. Is that actually the fourth dimension? There's like tesseracts and stuff. I'm getting weird with it. Told me to do that with Biomutant. I just kind of transported that advice over here. But that sounds awesome. Looking forward to seeing what you pop out. So very cool. Nerdbomber, are you over there?
I am over here. So I have 3 major updates, and one is more in depth. The other 2 I'll kind of gloss over. The biggest one is that I started playing Ratchet and Clank, and
Rifts apart.
Yeah, and it is freaking incredible. I would say it's probably easily my game of the year, and I know we're only halfway through the year, and there's a lot of games to come out, and I've played a very smattering of games in the past 6 months. And I mean, we're even talking like Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I put that on hold to play this game, and I am not disappointed in the least.
You backburnered Mass Effect?
I backburnered Mass Effect.
Wow.
Well, I figured Ratchet and Clank is only like a 15-hour playthrough, and Mass Effect is literally going to be hundreds of hours of my life. So I figured I could take a little break, come back to it, and, you know, have a fun Ratchet and Clank experience. And I mean, in terms of the PS5 impact, when they were saying in all of the trailers and stuff that it would be a very seamless experience and you wouldn't be sitting in loading screens at all, they were not joking. I don't think I've sat in a loading screen, period. I think the only screens that I actively sit at are when I'm going through menus, selecting different weapons and stuff. It's a completely seamless game. You jump from different worlds to worlds, controlling different characters because you control this, not really a spoiler, they showed you this in the trailer too. You control both Ratchet and the new Lombax character. And so you're going back and forth between the two, and everything is seamless. Everything looks beautiful. I mean, even graphically speaking, I think this is one of the first games, and like I saw it too with Spider-Man Miles Morales. These games really take that graphical power of the PS5 seriously. I've been playing on obviously like graphical fidelity modes when I play these games because, I mean, the frames per second is nice to have, but like I want to see all the ray tracing and fun stuff. And I think I paused the game to answer a phone call or something. And so I put it in photo mode just to kind of like play around while I was on the phone. And I was just kind of rotating the camera. And it struck me for a second that you could actually see the little ridges on the blades of grass. And I was just like, the amount of detail in this game, it's probably one of the most gorgeous games that I think I've played in a very long time, if not potentially ever. And even when you're talking about the story, like there's a lot of heart, the same kind of heart that we, you know, would normally expect from Ratchet and Clank. It's such a good game. And I can't get enough. Even the exploration, like it's a very linear game, but you have options how you want to tackle different missions, like in what order. And even like within the little worlds, there's little side missions that pop up, not like a ton. I would say there's probably like 1 or 2 side missions per world. But if you actually go through and you explore everything, there's fun little Easter eggs and stuff that you accomplish. And it's not something that will take you like hours to grind through. Like if you take an hour out of your time to get all the collectibles on a certain world, you'll be able to like fly a dragon, which is super dope. I cannot rave enough about the game. I'm super, super happy with it. I think all of the hype and all of the hubbub around the game that we saw in the trailers is absolutely warranted. 10 out of 10 experience. And I think this is something that if and when people start getting PS5s more readily, this should be like one of the first required games that people should play. And I know I said that about Astro's Playroom, but like play this first.
This is just the golden age for you. I mean,
It
Mass
really
Effect,
is.
Ratchet and Clank. I can hear there's just pure joy radiating from you, and it's nice.
Yeah, like I feel like whenever I sit down to play a game, at least in the past few months, I know I'm going to be happy. I'm not coming away frustrated. Like it's just a good time. It's a good gaming time to be me, for sure.
Right on. Very exciting.
And then the other 2 quick things that I want to cover. One is a book, one is a movie. So we did watch Wish Dragon, which is a Netflix original animated movie. It just came out, I want to say last weekend, I think was the first weekend it came out. And I thought it was super cute. Like
Got some adult humor in it too.
it does have adult humor. It felt a very, very much like Aladdin kind of themes. Like, you know, he comes across this teapot and then suddenly has this magical entity who has been trapped in the teapot for hundreds of thousands of years, and you know he has to grant him 3 wishes and really just wants his freedom at the end of the day. And how, you know, the wish dragon interacts with the main character, and how the main character interacts with his friend / love interest, and what he wants from his wishes was very Aladdin-esque and very cute, and I enjoyed it. I was a big fan. So if you like cute animated movies, definitely go watch that. And then from a reading perspective, I've been burning through the Murderbot Diaries, which has won a ton of like Nebula awards, and it's great. They're more like novellas. They're very short. You can read each book in like probably under 2 hours. And I have. And now I'm sad because I ran out and I want more. So
Dang. R.I.P.
definitely the premise of the books are essentially this security unit bot, which is sentient enough to kind of like operate on its own, kind of hacks itself to get rid of any kind of security overrides and that govern its actions, and how it grapples with its own sentience and navigating human life in this far future spacey type environment. So very cool. Check it out.
Right on. Very cool. I have a much shorter update. I'm just going to throw in 2 quick mini reviews. One thing I do often, not often, but I will bring up board games on this podcast. I've been doing some solo board gaming, which I do pretty regularly, but I just got a new one from my brother for my birthday. It's called Under Falling Skies, and it is a solo board game that has a space theme, and it's kind of like Space Invaders. They're basically alien ships falling from the sky towards your base, which is in Roswell, New Mexico, and you're kind of basically trying to shoot down ships and also find a way to research enough to defeat the mothership. Super cool mechanics, dice rolling being the primary one, but there are other things that happen, and it's a lot of fun. Solo board games are kind of my happy place. They soothe me, and they require a great amount of thought that, you know, they stimulate the brain, but they're not too frustrating. So definite shout out to that. Movie-wise, I watched, Hayes and I watched In the Heights this weekend, which came out, I believe, 2 weekends ago. Guys, it's pretty good. It's a little long for my tastes, but they're kind of beholden to their source material, which is a musical that was probably like 3 hours long. They actually cut songs, but they got it down to like 2 hours, 22 minutes or something like that. And it does drag a little bit towards the end, but the music is amazing. You know, obviously Lin-Manuel Miranda's hands are all over it. A lot of really, really great rapping sequences. If you like Latin music at all, you're going to love this. There were certain sequences in which they were like doing special effects graphic-y stuff. I'm not talking about like stunts. I'm talking about like superimposing graphics on the screen. And I was like, they didn't need to do that. Lin-Manuel just had a lot more money than he got for like Hamilton. And he's kind of like showing it, which was weird. But overall, super, super good. Definitely would recommend watching it. A lot of great musical numbers. I actually saw the show back in 2009 when it was like first touring in America. So it was cool to kind of revisit the show. And
how did it translate from on-stage musical to movie? Like, was there drastic differences? That's what I'm always curious. Every
there were
time there's
differences.
Adaptations.
Well, it was more so. The differences were less so about moving from a stage show to a movie, and those existed. But I would say the bigger differences were they made plot changes in various places that kind of make the story more current and more reflective of today's society and how Latinos in America struggle in various ways and how they can deal with that through community and things like that. Obviously, a lot of that touches on more recent events than happened in 2009 and 2008 or whenever this came out. So there were a lot of major changes in that area. On the stage, there are certain things you can't do, right? There's an entire sequence where two characters are dancing on a wall. It's like anti-gravity kind of thing. They're like sideways relative to, they're dancing on a wall, like up a building. And it's super cool, but you couldn't do it on a stage, obviously. So they took a lot of the opportunities that were given to them by the format and in a lot of respects made the best of them. And it was very cool. A lot of huge sequences, hundreds of dancers, flash mob style kind of thing that were really, really cool to watch. A lot of dancing. I would say it focuses a little bit more on big dance numbers than Hamilton does. So if you're into that, that's also something to watch out for. But all in all, great experience. Definitely watch it, especially if you have HBO Max. It's free to you for, I think, a couple more weeks. So check it out. Also, the lead, I should have mentioned, the lead is Hamilton's son and also that other guy. He plays two parts. Anthony Ramos, I think is his name. He plays two parts in Hamilton. One of them is Hamilton's son. And he's great. He's phenomenal. So definitely go check it out. So that brings us to the game. And I believe Nerdbomber is hosting this week, even though what happened? Didn't we who won?
Ben won.
Ben won. So we were in a state of flux and you stepped up.
In the sense of giving Techtic a shot to get more wins under his belt, I figured, I would host this week and maybe he'll be able to redeem himself.
You guys would collude and I would be over here by myself.
No, I think if anything, this topic you will find yourself very happy about and probably have a better chance to win because the topic of this game this week is Metroid as voted upon by our Patreon subscribers.
This just means I'm going to be embarrassed, but go ahead.
I'm going to hop right into this first one. Illeagle, you'll answer first, Techtic will go second, and then you guys will swap back and forth.
Right.
In what year did the original Metroid game release?
1980. Hang on. 1985. 1985.
Techtic?
It's way later than that, but I don't want to bust. So I'm going to go 1986.
Wow. The +1 tactic worked because that is the correct answer.
Come on.
Yeah, it was released in 1986 on the NES. So, Illeagle, your informed guess was very close.
This is the dumbest game ever. Oh,
so,
you jerk. All
Techtic has a point. Illeagle, you still have a chance to come back.
Vengeance is going to be unbelievable.
I mean, it's not my fault. I knew the exact year, and you picked 1 year less than it.
Oh, my gosh. Give me a freaking break. I was about to continue. I'm just white with rage right now, but we have to just move. We got to get through it.
This next one is my only next kind of uninteresting question. How many Metroid games have already been released? I'm not talking about upcoming, already been released. He's counting on his finger, folks. Fingers, actually multiple, more than one.
11.
12.
And that revenge tactic worked because there have been 14 Metroid titles that have been released. The game
what did I miss?
is all tied up.
How's it feel? I'd like to call a truce. Can we call a truce? Well, I guess we'll see whenever you give your next.
I thought I had them all. This is frustrating me. I'm a pretty big Metroid fan, and it all started with actually the original Smash is what got me into it.
Well, one that you might be missing is Metroid Prime Pinball, which was
that doesn't
offshoot.
count.
It is part of
Totally
the Metroid series.
counts.
Totally counts. It received generally positive reviews. How many copies were sold during the debut month in October 2005 in the United States of Metroid Prime Pinball?
Generally positive reviews is not very good. Not very positive, I feel like. But I'm going to... Okay, this is hard. In its release month in 2005, how many copies were sold?
In the United States.
In the US of A, baby. Not many. I mean, not many. 80,000.
I think it's a bit more than that. I think this isn't a plus one. I'm going to say 100,000.
You both bust-a-rhymed here.
Really?
Okay.
6,228 copies.
That's
barely
depressing.
any.
Critics praised the game's transposition of the Metroid series into pinball, but said it had a very big lack of variety. So
presumably you're pinballing with the morph ball. I've actually never played Metroid Pinball or whatever it's called. But that's
it's not a Metroid game.
You know, that was a really good segue though into my next question. So obviously the morph ball was a complex piece of Chozo technology that allowed Samus to turn into a sphere. How big in meters was that sphere in diameter?
Oof.
Per game lore.
Techtic, you're first this time, and I'm very happy about it.
He is now trying to measure between the ground and his hand.
Trying to visualize a meter stick.
Right. That's what you have to do. That's exactly what I'm doing. That's just good sense right there.
0.5 meters.
That's too big, is my immediate thought. So I'm just gonna say 0.1 because I think 0.5 is too big.
So Techtic gets this one. 0.8 meters was the diameter.
What? That's huge.
Of the morph ball.
How big are you in morph ball form? Jeez.
I mean, I if I could do it, I'd be smaller than that. What's even the point?
Plus, visualize the game and superimpose the ball on the character.
I'm basically 0.8 meters tall. I mean, gee whiz.
And also, consider this. Samus is I believe 6 foot. Like, Samus is tall. So if you superimpose the ball onto the character, it makes sense.
Is 6 foot like 2 meters? Or do I not understand what meters are? Whatever.
I have no idea.
We'll figure it out in post. So I'm losing by 2 now, right?
No, it's 2-1. You guys both lost on the last one, so no one got points for that one.
All right, I'm still here.
I have 2 more questions. So this is still anybody's game. So this one I thought was really interesting. The developers from Retro Studios noted that it was kind of interesting and difficult to fit all of the sound effects for the world of Metroid Prime onto one chip. How big, how much space do they have in megabytes to fit all of the sound effects for the world of Metroid Prime?
Sound design of Metroid Prime, by the way, one of the best things about the game. And the soundtrack also is phenomenal.
Yeah, is soundtrack included, or is it just
No, I think
this was the sound effects for the world.
How many? You said megabytes?
Yes.
I mean, sound files aren't that big. Come on. You know what? Let's just go for it. 128.
Techtic?
512.
Whew.
This is another bust. They fit all of those world sound effects into 6 megabytes of space.
Wow.
Not even a standard megabyte size. Jeez.
Yeah. So I thought that was just an interesting question. I didn't realize you guys would both bust on that, but I thought that was kind of neat.
Well, we're not very smart. So we're getting into the last question here. I need to get this right.
And then I'd have to find a tiebreaker. So yeah.
Or my shame is going to be unbearable. So let's do this.
How many times was Super Metroid nearly canceled during its development?
Super Metroid, that was the original one?
I think the original one was probably just Metroid, but I actually don't know.
Which one was Super Metroid?
I think Super Metroid came out on the SNES.
Yeah. First one was just Metroid.
Yeah. How many times was it canceled during
development? How many times was it nearly canceled? It obviously came out, so it wasn't canceled.
Yeah. How many? They canceled it and then they canceled it again. They said,
I'm going to say
double
6.
Canceled.
6 times.
Boy, that's a great guess.
Thanks.
That's a very good guess.
Thank you.
I am going to put my faith in the developers and say they were doing a generally good job. So I'm going to say 2. And hope that it's less than 6.
All right, Illeagle, you're forcing me to find a backup question here.
That's what I'm talking about.
The game was nearly canceled 3 times during its development due to A, the large size of the game, and B, the fact that it was not nearly as popular as Super Mario or Zelda. But then the critical and commercial success of the game actually saved the series from there on out, because the series then would have been canned as well if Super Metroid did not see the light of day.
All right, so we're going into it's going to be a text-in question, I assume. Because we've been jerks to each other this whole game.
This is literally every time how I lose. It's like Groundhog Day over here.
So Samus was actually featured in a series of comic books called Captain N, the Game Master, published by Valiant Comics. In what year were those comics published? Text it in, boys.
My answer is in.
Oh my gosh. You both busted. The comic was published in 1990. Illeagle in 1991. Techtic in 1992. So,
wow, I'm so glad it wasn't 93. Oh my gosh. Or 92, I guess.
Okay.
Sorry.
I have another backup.
Techtic, let's make sure we screw this one up for her, too.
In 2011, readers of the Guinness World Records Gamers Edition voted Samus as what number of the top video game characters of all time? Kicking this back to 2011. I don't care.
Like number 1 is the best?
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
most popular or whatever.
Oh my God. Okay, you guys texted me the same answer.
Okay,
you both said 4. Give me a new answer. That's not correct.
Okay, interesting. Now this is even weirder. Okay.
I'm not going to tell you if it, I'm not going to tell you.
Of course,
I'm just going to say that's not correct. You both gave me the same answer.
Okay, I've texted a new number.
All right. So, Illeagle texted in 7. Techtic texted in 3. The correct answer was 14. Illeagle wins this one by the tiniest margin. This literally
Techtic.
came down to the wire.
I actually feel bad this time. That was so drawn out. He was ahead for a good portion of it too. That's brutal. Well,
And it was all because you came at me aggressively with that +1, whereas mine had merit.
mine didn't have merit. You're right. Well, look, what can I say? I'm 9-2, Nerdbomber 7-3. Our good friend Ben 1-0, Techtic 4-6 now. But the year is long, and there's still quite a bit of time. I will be hosting next week's quiz, and I will be sure to make it a good one for you. We want to thank you all for joining us. We want to thank Joseph Balderrama again for sitting down to chat with us for a while, and thank you all for sticking with us through the news, through the what are you up to, through the game, and reaching the finish line here with us at the end. Thank you again to our Patreon producers. Thank you again to our sponsor, and thanks to all of you. Go hit us up on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, hit us up on Twitter's handles aforementioned, and get out there and tell your
Dippin' Dots vendor.
Okay. We know how I feel about Dippin' Dots, but I have nothing else. So tell your Dippin' Dots vendor, and if you have one, maybe reevaluate some things, because I just don't know how you even have a Dippin' Dots vendor. But tell your Dippin' Dots vendor. They might like it. We have at least one Dippin' Dots fan on the show, so might hit close to home for them. We'll see you all next week.